What would you put in your backpack if you had a new coaching engagement but could only take a limited number of items? Each episode, the Coach's Backpack looks at the multifaceted world of coaching and asks a new guest to tell us what they would take with them and why. Hi, I'm David Lowe, and this week we're taking a peek inside the backpack of Cecile Hemery, career and leadership coach. Welcome, Cecile.
Thank you. Nice to be here, David.
Nice to have you with us. So, first question, Cecile, getting straight into it, is how would you describe what you do in under 20 words?
Well, I'm a career and leadership coach, and I help quiet leaders find confidence and clarity so that they can authentically shine, belong, and have purpose and impact.
Okay. Now, I didn't count that, Cecile. I'm going to have to trust you. Okay, well, we will find out more about these quiet leaders that you're working with shortly. So I know you know the concept, but in case anyone's not heard the podcast before, you've been asked to coach a new client, but are limited to what you can take with you. So don't worry, you've got your essentials, your clothes, your toothbrush, and in addition to those, you can take a book, a tool, technique, concept, method, approach, or whatever you want to call it, one other item of your choice, plus a person from the past or the present to accompany you. So, Cecile, what would you take with you and why?
Well, I'll start with the book. The book that I would take, I've given some thoughts about it, and I think it would be The Lady's Delight, Au Bonheur des Dames in French, by Émile Zola. It's a book that I've read so many times since I was a teenager. And it's obviously it's from Émile Zola, so it's in the 19th century. And it's the story of one of those new department store, a fashion department store for women. And it's the story of a working class Denise who enters as a worker and her rise into the store. But it's also the story of adapting to change, to modernity. What happens to the other shops who use the old way and who are completely taken over by this big, huge new department store that takes away their business. And how do you manage that? And I think it's a great, with AI coming and stuff, I think it's a story that's still very relevant today. And what I love about the character of Denise is that she's a very quiet person. And she goes through her journey with authenticity, staying herself, through hard work and integrity. And you cannot but admire her doing that in a setting where women didn't have that many options either.
Hey, so when you say a quiet person, so you said quiet leaders in your
Yeah.
description earlier, you described Denise as quiet. What do you mean by quiet?
By quiet, I mean someone who's either introverted or sensitive, or just who's not the type of person who just make noise, or will step into the light. They're quietly staying in the shadows, quietly making their ways, figuring things out as they come. They're not necessarily thinking with ambition. They're just doing what feels right. They want to do a good job. They're driven by that. So I guess that's more what I mean by quiet person. Someone who's just not attracted by the light and will just go there at their own pace.
Okay, so could be someone who has amazing leadership qualities, but just isn't forthcoming like some people.
Yes. And I suppose that in today's society, when we think about a leader, we think about someone who's going to be extroverted. We think about someone who speaks a lot. We think about someone who has strong opinion and shares them. We think about the person who speaks the loudest in the room, even though we know that's not necessarily true. Those are the kind of images that come to mind. But quiet people make excellent leaders too, because they have other qualities. They are great listeners. They think things through with more depth, because that's just how their brain works. They just process things a little bit longer. And so that leads them to take more calculated risks and bring a more bigger picture approach to what they think. So there are tons of quality that are associated with being more quiet, with being more introverted, but it's not necessarily qualities that comes to mind. And so we need to remind people of the qualities that quiet leaders have. No one is better than the other, but everyone has something to bring to the table that has value.
And there certainly seems to be a judgment. I mean, I've seen a few clients and the conversation has come up at various times of, I just take a bit longer. I think things through before I speak. And I'm now being told by the leadership, by the people above me, that I need to be speaking more. And, and it's just not how they are.
And it becomes a loop because they think they're doing it wrong. They're telling themselves that they're not being good leaders, or they're not doing things the way they should be. And so that impacts the confidence, which makes it harder to then show up and say those things. So because it's such a prevalent picture, then it sort of becomes true, but it doesn't need to be.
What's one golden nugget that you're willing to offer people who are associating themselves with that quiet leader?
My golden nugget for quiet leaders would be, remember to come out of the shadows from time to time, because we often have a very rich life inside of us as introverts or as quiet people, that people around us may have no idea that that's going on inside of us. And every now and then, we need to make sure that we share that with the world, that we let people know what's going on inside of us. And that even if it's sometimes scary, even if it's out of our comfort zone, there is great joy in doing it. And as introverts, we usually love connections, we love depths of connection. And if we allow ourselves to connect more, to show more, to step out of the comfort zone more, then we're going to have more of that. So even if the first step is a little bit hard, it's worth doing it.
And as an extrovert, I'm going to add on to that that we do like hearing from everybody. We may speak more often, but the quality of what an introvert says is usually a lot better than our quantity.
Well, we're great at complimenting each other.
Oh, you're great at
it. No, you're great.
No, you're great. Before we move on to other things that are going in your backpack, would you say you're a quiet person?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah?
I'm a very, very quiet person. It may not sound that way, but I am. Yeah, I'm probably an introversion scale that quite on the extreme of introvert.
When we say introvert and extrovert, I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding of what we mean by that.
Introverts. Some people, will think that when we talk about introverts, we mean someone who's shy, someone who's not really social, or someone who's afraid of being in social situation, but that's not what it means, or at least that's not how I'm using the word. When I talk about introverts and extroverts, I'm talking about where they're gaining and using their energy. And so for an introvert, their energy is coming from inwards. So that means that where they're in social situation, it is more draining for them. And an extrovert is the opposite. And the way the information goes through the brain is a little bit different. And so for an introvert, it's going to take a much longer pathway inside the brain, and which will make that the introvert is going to compare something that comes up with every little situation that ever happened in the past for them. And that's essentially why when you ask them a direct question, there's going to be like waiting for a moment for things to process, why it's harder for them if they haven't had a chance to prepare before to answer to something on the spot, even though they know the answer. So that's the context in which I'm talking about introversion.
So I consider myself an extrovert. It's that I might have been training for 3 days away, I get home, and actually going out with some friends would be what I do, whereas other people would just want to sit in a dark room and just be on their own, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard the term introvert hangover. Yeah. So that's that you had a great time with lots of people at an evening party or training or something amazing, but now you need to recharge the batteries. And so on your own with a book, a cat on your lap, and that's how you'll recharge.
Okay, so what else is going in your backpack? We have Emile Zola, the Lady's Delight, going in. What else?
So the thing that I would always want to have with me would be the ability to take a distance, to take a step back, from whatever it is that is happening, and looking for the bigger meaning, looking for the symbol of what's going on with me. And I'm probably very influenced in that by the psychoanalysis training that I've been doing for the past 3 years. But That would be the most important thing for me, to be able to step away from what's going on and think about, what is this situation telling me about what's going on about me? What is it that I need to be aware of or know or learn in this moment? What pattern does that reveal? And that distance, I believe, has been my life savior in the last few years, to not get caught up in whatever's been happening, but to find my way back to myself and act as who I want to be.
And what made you go down the psychoanalysis route?
I did do a psychoanalysis for several years. And when I became a coach, I realized that there were some of the things that I wanted to go deeper. I wanted the ability to go deeper with my clients. And I realized that the quality and the depth of the conversation I had with my psychoanalyst would be helpful to have this ability. So that's why I went and did this training to my tool belt.
And what do you feel it's given you?
Well, the type of psychoanalysis that I do is anthropological psychoanalysis. So it looks at what's going on for someone in terms of the development of their conscience and their life story, and and the phases of growing up and being who they are, from a philosophical approach, from a mythological approach, and from an anthropological approach. So through the story of man, how do we compare how humans built their own consciousness over time to how a child builds up their consciousness all the way through becoming an adult and beyond. And I think, talking about taking a step back, well, that's a pretty big step back, to put things together and to understand why we are how we are, and what's in our way, and what are the possible ways through, what's the next step for us personally and as a group of people.
Slightly terrified to get into this discussion because it sounds a bit existentialist that we're going down that route of, why am I here? Why do I exist? What's the purpose?
I mean, it is a bit existentialist, but I'd say it is the sort of questions that will cross the mind of quiet leaders every now and then. It is. But it's not just about existentialism, because all of that impact the day to day.
Okay. Well, and
And
let's we go on.
yeah, no, I was just going to give you an example of coming back from my training earlier this week. I was going up the stairs with my way too heavy suitcase. But I was managing it. The stairs weren't too steep. And then I saw someone come down the stairs. I didn't realize at first what they wanted, but they wanted to help me. But I was already kind of up, and like at this point, like handing over the suitcase would be more hassle than, just powering through just I was doing. And, it was heavy, but, I'm able to carry my own suitcase, and have been so for the past 2 days that I'd been traveling. So I said, no, thank you. I'm good. I'll just go up. And the person was like, no, 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 no. I insist. I'll carry your suitcase. And I was like, well, thank you, but no. And then they didn't take no for an answer. They said, no, 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 but I have to. And they stood in front of me. I had to stop. And I was like, well, no. I said no. And no means no, even when it's about carrying a suitcase. And so this all awkward moment was, eventually he got the message, and, he left me, probably thinking that I was being very unreasonable and, weird. And I left, feeling very frustrated, also feeling like, well, I did say no. It's not because you asked 10 times that the 10 times, I'm going to say yes, because that would be teaching that, well, no doesn't mean no if you ask enough times. So I reflected on what happened there. What happened there? And I think, if I take that step back, there was one message for me and there was one message for him. The message for him was probably pretty obvious. No means no. In whatever context, no means no. The message for me was, and it's linked to a conversation I had before where I said I wanted help on other stuff, completely unrelated stuff, but I was asking for help. And here was I with someone asking for help, and all I say is no. And it made me realize how open I am to receiving help, and how does that impact my ability to receive the help that I actually need. And that made me realize that maybe there's something I need to change in my posture so that I am able to receive the help that I actually need. And this incident just showed me that maybe I'm not quite there.
Or maybe you had a bag full of gold and you didn't want to hand it over to some stranger.
I wish.
Okay, so you've got your Emile Zola book,
Yeah,
you've got your ability to take a step back from the situation.
yeah.
What else? What is your either your one thing or your person?
So my one thing I think is my necklace. I have this necklace that I wear when I'm coaching. It's like my uniform, so that when I'm with a client, like I'm not really me. I'm the person that's there to support them and that they need me to be for them in that moment. And so what I'm feeling, what's going on in my own life, that doesn't have space. That doesn't belong to that space with them. So to me, this necklace symbolizes this is that I'm not Cecile. I am the coach in this moment.
Okay. There's a big discussion in coaching about authenticity, congruence, whatever we want to call it. And so what I heard two things there. I heard one is that I'm not really me, but then I also heard that you're not bringing the maybe unhelpful stuff that is going on in your life. Let's talk more about that authenticity and how that fits with what you were saying.
I mean, obviously, I'm still me. I'm still the vessel, and that vessel is me. And through my life and experiences and learnings that I've had, so it's still my approach. It's through my way, but whatever's going on in my own life isn't relevant in the session with my clients. So I don't bring that.
It's kind of that, not bottling up isn't quite the right word, but sectioning off, compartmentalizing
Yes.
maybe, in that you're popping the stuff that is going on in your life that might be distracting. You're kind of putting it in an amulet almost. I didn't see the necklace too much, but and obviously people on a podcast can't see it, but it almost like it kind of clasps around the stuff that is unhelpful.
Also, it also protects me in the same way because sometimes in a session, some people will share some very, very heavy stuff. Some people will go through very, very difficult times. And I also need not to carry that back with me when I go into my own life. So that's why I call it a uniform, because it allows me to separate that.
Mm.
What's theirs is theirs, what's mine is mine, and we're not mixing.
The amulet of transference, we could call it, if it was a mythical object, right?
Yes.
Where did it come from?
When I left my previous career, I did a lot of meditation and I came across this necklace, which was supposed to symbolize coherence and, the state of being grounded, of being present. And I like that symbol.
I really hoped you were going to say, well, David, it is an amulet of transference. And I got it from a witch in a forest who had to boil a cauldron of snake's teeth before she made it. But okay.
That would be a much better story.
You've got one more thing that you're allowed to take with you. This is your
Yes.
person from the past or the present. Who are they going to
Yeah.
be?
One person. I was very triggered by that actually, because why would I bring a person to work with a client? So I had lots of difficulties to choose one person. And actually, in the end, I was like, well, the first thing that comes to mind isn't a person, and it's my cat. And probably the best helper to support me into that coaching would be my cat. And so I would bring my cat. And my clients usually love when my cat makes herself visible or known. So I would bring my cat.
Cat is a perfectly acceptable
Yeah.
person to take with you. How many cats do you have?
Oh, just one.
Ah, okay. So I don't have the joy of trying to get you to choose between your cats. Damn.
Just one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you willing to tell us a bit more about your cat?
Yes, yes. She's a rescue tabby. I got her when I lived in Spain, and she was found at 1 day old in a bin and rescued by lovely people. And that's how I met her. And she's been my companion, in life ever since.
And what is the name of your cat?
Voila.
Paul Weller?
Voila.
Oh, Weller. And what does Weller mean?
Nothing.
Okay.
But it was actually the name of a place in Singapore that I used to go to hang out with my friends when I lived in Singapore before. And I thought it would make a great cat name. So when I moved to Barcelona, and I was like, well, I'm going to bring my favorite place in Singapore and I'm going to name my cat after it.
Fair enough. So, Cecile, you have your book by Emile Zola.
Yeah.
You have your amulet of transference,
Yes.
protect you. You've got Weller, and you've got your ability to step back.
Yeah.
So your backpack is now full. Your person is with you. Sometimes people help you pack your backpack when you're going away, maybe. What is the one thing you would want to make sure has not snuck in to your backpack?
The thing that came to mind is my phone. Obviously, I need my phone to get wherever I'm going. But like if there's something that I do not want to have in a session with a client is my phone. Because that's takes me away from where I'm supposed to be. So I would want to make sure that my phone isn't there in the session.
Right. Well, one final question for you, Cecile, is where do you hope you are or are not going on this fictional gig?
Well, I hope that I am helping this person to know more about themselves and to find inspiration in themselves to go where they want to go, even if where they want to go isn't where they thought they wanted to go at first. And where I do not want to go is to not have made a difference and for not having been a connection. I want a connection and I want a special moment where we learn something about ourselves.
And I love how people interpret this because some people take it as a location, a geographical location. Some people take it as an organization. Some people take it more philosophically. It sounds like you've traveled a fair bit.
I have, yeah.
So, where in the world do you hope it is? Or is not, but that might get you into trouble.
Well, I don't know. That's a very difficult question because having moved around a lot, I realized that a place doesn't have any meaning because a place is always mixed with the people who are there at the time, what's going on in this place and in the world at the time. So where doesn't matter if it's not associated with when and who with and what's going on there. People often ask me, what's my favorite place that I lived? And I always find it very difficult to answer because at the time, they were all my favorite places, but then things changed and they stopped being my favorite places and I found another one. I think I want to be where it feels right. And that depends on whatever's going on. Sorry.
That makes it very difficult for people to get hold of you. So, Cecile, if people do want to know more about you and your work, where can they go?
Well, yeah, my website, which is Walayance, or find me on LinkedIn or Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, and we'll put links in the show notes for those as well.
Yeah.
Marvelous. Well, thank you very much, Cecile, for being a guest on the Coach's Backpack.
Thank you. It was lovely sharing this moment with you. And I hope that my backpack has inspired people to think about what they want to put in their backpack.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Coach's Backpack. If you would like extra goodies such as free tools, offers, further info about our guests, and maybe even the odd peek inside their actual backpack, sign up for our mailing list at thecoachesbackpack.com. And don't forget to follow the podcast too. See you next time.